morning. I just want to correct, I'm not a urologist, I'm a sexual health specialist.
I apologize for that, sir. Thank you for correcting us today. Now let's start the interview and talk about what we're here for. Men's health in general in South Africa. What are the statistics showing us? What is wrong, or what are men doing wrong right now?
You see, our problem is that we as men live very dangerously. So we die earlier, and when we die more violent deaths. And it's just because we are notoriously bad at taking responsibility for our health. Our female counterparts, they visit the doctor quite often for very many reasons, but we as men don't do that, and we live dangerously. We abuse alcohol, drugs, we smoke, and we also are very violent if we have to solve disputes, and that leads to also, let's put that an important factor, the way we drive on our roads, that leads us to die very violent deaths.
Yeah, that's very concerning. Now, reproductive health is very important for men, and I'm sure it's one of those that we don't even look at all. What are we doing wrong with regards to our reproductive health in South Africa?
You know, I think it is important to know that as men we have testicles, and the testicles produce male hormone, which is known as testosterone, but also sperm, which is then responsible for our fertility. Now, the testosterone that's produced by the testicles, it reaches a peak when we are in our late teens and early 20s. But then as we get older, we have a decline in our testosterone level by about 1 to 2% per year. And when we reach about 45, the age of 45, 25% to half of all men have a lower testosterone that has a real effect on our health.
What about testosterone treatments that we see being administered even by doctors now, GPs administer testosterone quite freely? How do you view that? And are there studies in that talk to the long-term use of synthetic testosterone?
Well, I think what is important is there's what we call a syndrome, testosterone deficiency syndrome. And lots of men, when they get older, will suffer from this testosterone deficiency syndrome. And that means they will present with symptoms. And one of the very important symptoms is that they will complain that they have a low sexual drive or libido. The other one is that they might have problems with erections and that they have less sexual fantasies and thoughts. But it's also important that this low testosterone has an effect on our general health. It can have an effect on our weight. It can, if it continues, later cause problems with the lipids, the fat in our body. It can have a problem with our blood pressure. It can also even lead to diabetes and also our bone health. So when men have a low testosterone, they complain about a lot of things, the sexual things that I've already mentioned, but then also that they lose their muscle strength, their zest for life, what we call their oomph. And Bayer, one of our pharmaceutical companies, have launched a whole campaign for this Men's Health Month and week next week, where they say, let's own the oomph, let's bring this back so that we have better health. And important to know that you have a low testosterone is to go visit your doctor. And a blood test will be done. And if that proves to be low and you have lots of these symptoms of testosterone deficiency or low testosterone, then it can be replaced. And that is important to know. It's not an idea to bring the testosterone level to an abnormal high level that we see sometimes in people that abuse testosterone and anabolic steroids when they do bodybuilding. This is just to normalize the testosterone and to get the health going, because we want our men to live healthy.
How does erectile dysfunction and sexual problems and so forth, how do you think it plays out in the wider family, in the group and so forth?
You know, I think our men have an idea that an erection is a sort of a proof of your manhood and your ability to have sex and satisfy your partner is then a sign that you are the man. I think it is important that we know that erections is an important part of our masculinity, of being a male, but that is not the only thing. It is the way we approach our partners. It is that we are in loving relationships with one another. And yes, part of a relationship is that we are also sexually intimate. And yes, for that, we as men need erections. And there's lots of things that is necessary for an erection. Blood flow, nerve conduction, testosterone as a hormone, healthy spongy tissue in the penis. And again, our lifestyle, the way we live, if we live dangerously, if we abuse alcohol, if we smoke, it does a lot of damage to our body. It has an effect on the blood flow in the body, and it can have an effect on erections. So again, men have to look at their health, their blood pressure, their cholesterol. They have to go look at their testosterone levels, make sure that that is not lowered. They have to look at their blood glucose, because a lot of men also suffer from diabetes. And this is why it's so important that we focus on men's health in Men's Health Month, and that we men really take responsibility and go see our doctors, especially if we've lost our oomph.
Dr. Kok, I thank you for joining us today. Dr. Etienne Kok, coming to us live from Pretoria. Happy Father's Day to you, Dr. Kok, and all the best. Now, of course, society has long defined males and females by their physical attributes, thereby creating boxes in which males and females then must fit. Now, traditionally, the male is seen as the provider and holds the power at home, while the woman is supposed to be the submissive nurturer. But with the advent of human rights campaigns pushing for equality, gender roles are being broken down, not only in the workplace, but also at home, in the domestic setting. With more women being more educated, the chances of a man being in a relationships with a partner who earns more than him are significantly higher than ever before. But even now, in 2016, for a lot of men, this is very unfamiliar territory, a reality that sends shivers down their spines. Now, to discuss men's anxieties in these relationships, in these changing times, and also maybe talk a little bit about my masculinity and where we are joined this morning by Mbuyiselo Botha, Commissioner at the Gender Commission. A very good morning to you, Mr. Botha. How are you today?
Very well. How are you, Eben? Good.
Very, very good. I'm very happy to be doing this kind of show because, I think sometimes all our social problems start with the father not being at home or the father not being happy for that matter. It's all changing, isn't it? And we as men have to change.
Absolutely. It's changing. Sometimes it's changed the better, but also, Eben, it's slower, the change. It's something that you can't see, because also the sad part is that in the media, we would always accentuate, focus, emphasize on the negative, when in fact, I can venture to say the majority of men don't abuse, don't rape, but all of these things are not making headlines. When you care for your children, when you care for your family, when you care for other men, these are things, Eben, would not make news, and for obvious reasons. It's like when a man bites the dog, that makes news, but when the dog bites the man, it's accepted. So it can't make news.
Chris Rock, he says, you're supposed to adult and you're supposed to father.
They say that, but you're supposed to buy milk, you're supposed to provide, and when you do these things, why should we? It's like congratulating a fish for swimming. People argue,
Men and women treat money a little bit different. What do you think? What do you think should change, or the benefits of having a female partner that maybe earns more than the man in this, and how should men think about this and overcome this, because this is the 21st century, isn't it?
It is, but also we can't be simplistic about it, because we must go back and say how you and I always emphasize this, that how you and I were raised to look at the structure, the family structure, and we're told that, look, you're the provider, and it is expected of you to bring in more bacon,
Yes.
so to speak. And when you are in a situation where you are unemployed, society also puts all of these pressures, and sometimes unfairly, that what kind of a man that you are led by this woman, but also what kind of a man you bring in 30 rent, and she brings in 30,000.
Yes.
And you see, we can't be just dismiss them. We must be realistic and say that you would find yourself, you're under pressure, because then society says, but this is not a real definition, Evan, of what it means to be a real Evan,
Absolutely. How do we change these perceptions, and as men, how do we get around these changes that's happening inside our very own homes now?
I think, Evan, it's important for us to start at an early childhood. And this is that means, you see, as South Africans, we like this instant coffee type of things.
Yeah.
But that means we have to do a lot of deep work. We've got to go down the ground. I mean, imagine at crashes. We've got to go and start there.
Yeah.
And, we raise them understanding what is equality, and understanding how do I respect this woman? How do I respect the young girl as a young boy? But also in the family, we also have to say to men, but. The redefinition of what really makes me a man.
Yeah.
Am I a man because I'm defined by where I stay, how much I have, what I drive, and all of those things that may be important. But we need even to come to a point where we begin to redefine what it means to be a man, because these things ultimately, or at the end of the day, they may not necessarily define who you and I are as men. Yeah.
And it's something that men, we have to do for ourselves. We have to change, otherwise we're going to become extinct, I think. But I want to ask you, as the Gender Commission, what are some of the other things that you found the unnerving aspects that come with the changing gender roles at home and in society?
Well, violence. I mean, the 9 provinces where the commission operates. I mean, the issues of violence against women predominant. In all the 9 provinces, and the commission with the education officers, the legal officers, does a great work in intervention. So we find, I mean, in the provinces where operate. I mean, the different masculinities that we have in our country. So we find as a commission that doing work with our educational officers, research workers, the one thing that comes out time and time and again is issues of violence.
So it's almost like we suffer from hyper masculinity, which is something that I've discussed in the past with other guests. But I want to talk about the children in conclusion with you today. Tell us, on a positive note, children that grow up in a household where the gender roles are changing organically, what do these children look like, and how do they benefit from this?
Well, if children grow up in an environment where there's non-violence, possibilities are that they will embrace non-violence as a way of life. But also, if they grow in situations where they see visibly, practically, issues of equality, there's a possibility that they would grow up also understanding to respect other human beings, to respect women, to respect men. But also the sad thing is that if they grow in environments where there's constant violence, and I mean, it has these negative adverse effects on them. So it's important that as couples, as partners, how the language we talk, how we treat each other, all of those things. Sometimes they may seem very minute, they may seem very small, but they're important because they're going to be character grounding for kids. Darkness
cannot defeat darkness. Only light can, they say.
Absolutely. Well said. Absolutely.
Thank you for coming in today. Mbuyiselo Botha is a commissioner at the Gender Commission. We talked about, the changing role within society, gender roles, that is. And as men, it's our duty to embrace it. It's our duty to accept equality. We've come a long way. Now we move on. The son of former SABC anchor